Hello, everyone. Can everybody hear me? Okay, I'm going to switch things up a little bit. Before I begin, will everybody in this room consent to hearing and learning about my culminating project?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. Because if not, I would have to stop right now and just not give my presentation. My name is Maria Romo. Thank you all for being here. I will now be presenting to you my culminating project titled Organizational Scaling, Bridging the Consent Education Gap in California. So in my presentation, I will be going over what the consent education gap is, a definition of organizational scaling. I will give two different case analyses that I conducted, which provide a practical application of scaling concepts that we can use when we scale organizations. And I will offer two policy recommendations for the future. So what is the consent education gap? It begins with the California Healthy Youth Act, which aims to provide pupils the knowledge and skills necessary to develop healthy attitudes concerning adolescent growth and development, including anything around body image, gender, sexual orientation, marriage, family, and yeah. So consent education is more than a disaster plan. It's like it's not just something that we can use to help students avoid sexual predators, STIs, or even date rape. It's more like a life skill that we can utilize to navigate adulthood. So California is very unique in the way that this is very pivotal for a lot of the legislation concerning sex education in the entire United States. It's mainly only used within grades 7 through 12 schools, but it fails to address and implement any language around consent education in sexual education curriculum and legislation. So what does this have to do with organizational scaling? Organizational scaling is an expansion and growth that results in increased impact. It's basically the spreading of excellence within an organization as it grows. And this excellence refers to the systems, the schemas, norms, drivers that are already within an organization that cause them to scale up or outward. And we differentiate scaling within two different ways, either horizontal scaling or vertical scaling. When an organization scales horizontally, it basically has outward growth that uses replication and adaptation models that will help it to cover a larger geographical space. In contrast, vertical scaling is referred more to in terms of climbing the hierarchy ladder. And in this scenario, organizations often will develop or involve themselves more with different sectors, different policy stakeholders, have more donors and investors that are invested in the actions that the organization does. However, not all organizations should scale up, and mainly there are 5 different drivers to scale that we use to identify if an organization should or should not scale up or outward. These drivers to scale include ideas, vision, leadership, external factors, and incentives and accountability. In my paper, I basically covered all of these drivers to scale and used a couple of different frameworks that are available during different scaling organization concepts, and applied them to do different concepts and different organizations to see how they could scale upward or outward to address this consent education gap. So the first one I will be talking about is Verity. Verity is Sonoma County's only rape crisis center. They were founded in 1974 in Santa Rosa, California, and their mission is to strive to eliminate all forms of violence with a special focus on sexual assault abuse. They support social justice and equality for all adults and children that have experienced sexual assault in their lifetimes. The success of the programs they offer in their counseling, prevention, and intervention services is very dependent on the trust that they have built in their communities. And because they have built this trust over since 1974, I guess, I forget how many years that's been, they believe that they are doing their due diligence to provide a service, a very good service to the community. And they believe that they're reaching their goals. So in my analysis, I basically went into their entire like organizational scale, saw how many people are working within their organization, saw how many volunteers they have, how their programs are run, and came up with this visual model of what their current organizational scale looks like. As you can see, they have their different departments and the different programs that they offer within those departments. However, there are certain things that they miss if the increase in demand that they face is going to affect them, and if they can remain sustainable in the future. This organizational chart here is what I basically came up with after providing my analysis and applying different concepts, scaling concepts that they can use to advance the sustainability of their organization. As you can see, I've added a couple of different departments, including an Office of Business Administration, Human Resources, Strategic Engagement, and an Office of Finance. The reason I've added these is so that they can basically increase customer involvement, transparency, reduce waste elimination, encourage continuous improvement, and most importantly, accommodate changes to ensure the future sustainability of the organization, especially as this is an example of what an organization would look like if they're scaling vertically. It's really important to note that as the organization grows, they're going to be getting in more funding. They want to be able to be sustainable so that they can communicate with larger groups of stakeholders in the future. Speak About It is the second organization I talk about in one of my analyses. It's an example of how organizations, in contrast, can scale horizontally. Speak About It was started in 2010, and let me get this correctly, as a theater club that uses real life experiences and dialogue to educate and engage students to prevent sexual violence, build healthy relationships, and create positive change in their communities. As you can see, their mission statement is to promote awareness of healthy sexual choices, advocate for consent, prevent sexual violence through inclusive performance-based education, discussion facilitation, and provision of resources. They started very, very small, and they remain very, very small. The organizational chart that I have for them basically has them split into two different departments, which again is very simple considering the magnitude of this organization. They tour across 26 different states. They reach more than 46,000 students every single year, and they provide programs and services to all of them. After going into my analysis of this organization and learning more about their reach, I basically came up with this proposed organizational chart, which will help them, which will help their, what was their previous marketing department, split into couple of different other departments, including communications, research, and finance, so that the marketing department they currently have isn't overworked and overwhelmed with the demand and duty that they're currently facing in this organization. Speak About It, like I said, is a very, very excellent example of how horizontal scaling can use replication. As we can see with the different programs they provide here at the bottom, higher education, adult training workshops, and their regular high school director, which is in charge of the high school programs that they service. So why do I mention all of this? The changes that I've proposed to these organizations are directly tied to the policy recommendations that I've provided in my project. The first policy recommendation that I have is to have a policy amendment. We would rewrite California Healthy Youth Act so that it requires state schools to include consent education in their health and sex ed curriculums. The second policy recommendation that I have is a budget proposal where we would allocate a proposed budget for a pilot program that would leverage existing partnerships and incentivize organizations to come to California. Basically, like, these organizations exist out there in the world, and we're not using our full potential to leverage what they're already providing us and our communities. And there are policy ways that we can use that leverage to increase collaboration between the state departments and these organizations. Passing either one of these policy recommendations would be a great idea. And I'm not exactly sure if they would pass with the upcoming budget crisis that we're having. But they would be great just to have. We need a backup legislative requirements for consent education with the organizational changes that are necessary to provide such services. And the analyses that I conduct on Verity and speak about it show what needs to be done so that we can use these organizations and leverage them in the ways that we need to increase their maximum potential. But more than that, it also shows what we can do with organizational theory concepts so that we can meet the demands of the next level. So that we can meet the next level of state demands that we're facing in California. I really hope you guys enjoyed my presentation, and I appreciate you all for being here. Thank you. Okay, questions? Yes.
I love this topic. Great communication.
Yeah.
Can you provide an example of a consent education program currently going on in like K-12 type setting?
In a K through 12 type setting, I think Verity, well, not I think, I know Verity has one where they currently offer that service to specific elementary schools. Basically, the elementary school will reach out to the organization within Sonoma County, and they would create a curriculum specifically for this school, so it can be tailored for the students. They're not really done because it's not a topic a lot of people like to talk about, and it's not something that we widely discuss, but they do exist, and we just have to do the research on them. Yeah. Anybody else?
You mentioned one of your recommendations was a budget proposal. Do you have an estimate of how much that might cost?
Ooh, that's a very good question, because for a previous class, our 230 budgeting class, I did write a BCP, estimating that this might cost anywhere from $1 million to like $5 million, which sounds like a lot of money, but in the grand scheme of things, it's not a lot of money considering how much material goes into providing these services. So yes.